and I'm happy to participate. I'm sorry I cannot be in person. I apologize, just could not make it.
All right. So I think we're ready to get started. So Dave, Kendall, and Sheldon are here to talk about the wastewater collection system and treatment plant, and also go over some future planning and some of the challenges that we have now with our current system.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Dave St. Laurent. This is Kendall Espinoza and Sheldon Maine. And we were asked to put a presentation together to go over three major areas dealing with the wastewater treatment facility and the collection system, and one being the actual sewer shed, which is basically where all of the wastewater flows through town and how it gets to one point to another. And then Sheldon's going to go over basically the treatment plant overview of staffing, some of the regulatory requirements that drive what they do over there, the general day-to-day responsibilities, and there'll be a diagram of the treatment plant process and an overview of the improvements that were made to the treatment plant. We just did a $50 million treatment plant upgrade. Sheldon will be going over that. And then I'll be going over the third part, which is the capital improvements, and explain inflow and infiltration, so everyone understands that, exfiltration, and some of the Pearl and Free Streets overview and lessons learned. So I'll start off with the first slide here. I'll try to go through it pretty quickly. So our sewer shed, our collection system, has 25 miles of gravity sewer, 2 miles of force main, 560 sewer manholes, and 7 pump stations. Recent sewer upgrades were done on the Main Street sewer relining, the Mechanic Street sewer relining in 2019, Lime Rock Street sewer relining in 2019, Chestnut Street cross-country sewer relining in 2020, Gould and Grove Street point repairs, C Street manhole replacement, some other manhole rehabilitation, C Street force main replacement in 2022, and the big one is the Pearl and Free Street sewer main and lateral replacement in 2023. So the ones that I've kind of went over before, the C Street and the Pearl Street, were kind of small little pieces of trying to improve the collection system. Pearl Street is where we actually went in and just kind of went through everything. So we have 7 pump stations, and I broke them down into 2 categories here for you. Basically, all of our pump stations, the smaller pump stations, go through 2 major pump stations, and that'd be the Bayview pump station and the Rawson Avenue pump station. The pump stations that go through the Bayview or to the Bayview pump station are C Street, Cove Road, and Lake Beach. And you can see the upgrades and when they were done to those. And from Bayview Street, they get pumped through a force main back to the treatment plant where they're treated, where the wastewater is treated. The Rawson Avenue pump station, Washington Street and Mount Betty go to Rawson Ave, and then wastewater from Rawson Ave goes to the treatment plant. So all the water going to the treatment plant arrives there through two pump stations, which is Rawson Avenue and Bayview. And this is an example of the sewer shed right here. So this is the Rawson Avenue pump station. Here's Mount Betty, and here's the Washington Street. So they all kind of go to this pump station, which then goes to the treatment plant. And then we have the Lake Beach, the Bayview, the C Street, the Lake Beach going to Bayview, which then gets pumped to the treatment plant. Also over in Norumbega. So I'm going to go through each one of the pump stations and just general facts about them, some of the problems that exist with them. So the Bayview pump station, like it explains here, was upgraded in 2004, 2008, and 2023. It's got 3 pumps, a lag, lead, and standby. One pump can pump 1,770 gallons per minute. 2 pumps basically double. It's got a 250 kilowatt diesel generator, 12-inch force main, and it's got an emergency bypass. This is potentially over capacity right now because we have, with our current state of our collection system, because of the amount of water and infiltration getting into the system. One of the other problems that happens at this pump station, as you can see here, this pile of stuff, that's just all fat. This is,
Oh my God.
This is, they call it fog. It's called fat, oils, and greases. And most treatment plants have a fog policy. One of the ways we handle it here in Camden is we have an ordinance that requires restaurants to have grease traps. So this is why when you approve people's licenses for restaurants, making sure they have these grease traps in place is really important because it has a really negative effect on the treatment plant process. It can plug the piping. This has to be done twice a year, and you can see there's a significant amount of fat that basically ends up in the system.
Part of code.
Yes. Yep. Code enforcement takes care of that.
So they actually inspect?
They're supposed to, yeah.
Do we know that that happens?
That they regularly inspect the grease traps.
Or-
I can ask them how often they do,
Is that one of the things on the license that we look at?
that they need to have a
Like,
way
do we
of
see
dealing
that
with
on our,
fog.
It is not.
Yeah.
It's not, Janice?
I don't believe that is a question on the application.
It-
Not only.
we ask them if they're a US citizen, but we don't.
Right. No, I mean,
if I had
it
to
might not
choose-
be an actual question, but I assume that if the fire department or whomever has signed off, that they've met code.
Totally.
So then
Yeah.
that would be just part of the normal process they would have to go through.
There's a lot of ordinances, and it's, I mean, things slip by sometimes. I mean, I'm just bringing these to your attention because I think these are important. And I think if we're not doing it, we should, because it negatively affects the very important and expensive piece of equipment you're paying for, and can have a negative effect if it builds up in the piping. It causes backups.
Mhm.
It negatively affects the pumping. And it causes a lot of work too.
Mhm.
So it's important, and the DEP requires us to have a fog program, I believe.
Right.
And part of that is our ordinance. So
Is Dave, in your experience, is a grease trap something that is easily inspectable? Is this something we could train our personnel to do, or is this something that?
I think what needs to be done is we need to, when we do the inspection, we need to ask if they have a grease trap and if they have a preventative maintenance program in place to clean it. And then when they say, oh, I don't know, then we say, oh, okay, we got to look into this. And if they don't have one, that's when we got to start talking about having one installed, some type of system installed. And then we should also have it on our GIS system that documents that this is actually part of the collection system.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we're going to be working on with the treatment plant is upgrading the GIS system to incorporate camera results, improved sections of collection systems, so that when you're looking at the spider web of sewer line throughout the whole town, we want one section to be red that says we just replaced this, and another section that's blue that means, all right, we haven't done this yet. And then click on a segment, like a road segment. We should be able to click on that and see all the improvements done to that road. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a system of documentation, so that when I'm not around or someone else is around, they can just click the line and say, okay, look, you can see a picture of them putting the pipe in. It's an 8-inch main. It's a gravity system.
Dated.
It's dated. It says what was done. It has all the laterals where they belong, and the grease trap. So that's where we should be. We're probably not there, but it's kind of why I'm bringing it up. Probably needs to be done, and we probably need to have work with code to make sure that we have some kind of way of verifying or validating. I think it should be on their license myself, but I'm not the one that does that stuff. So.
And Audra, as we've discussed in the past, the fees that are associated with these permits should reflect the amount of work that the town's putting into
Right.
to do this additional work.
Yes.
They call these fatbergs.
Oh, that's that's in the Bayview Street pump station. I've never been in any of the pump stations Is that what they, which one is that?
This is Bayview.
Mhm.
This is
Oh.
Bayview. So this is basically,
Huh.
all of, so if we go up to the sewer shed, Bayview Street. So
I
we
know
have-
I know where it is, but
Well, no, but these are the other pump stations feeding into that.
yeah.
So I would think maybe most of this is coming from Bayview itself with the
All
restaurants.
the restaurants.
I mean, but people, it also must accumulate with just residential, right?
Right, but you're really 80% of it's
Yeah.
coming from your restaurants. That's just a fact. I mean, the DEP, when they teach you about pretreatment, that's one of the things that they tell you to look for. That's one of the inspection items. So there's that. So this is the C Street pump station. It's upgraded in 2015. There's 2 pumps, capacity of 600 GPM, 50 kilowatt diesel generator. It's got a new 10-inch force main. So as you recall, this used to cross the harbor over by the public landing. And we were required to remove it and then run. So we ran the line over here. You can see from the actual pump station, which is over here. We ran it down over here to Atlantic Ave, then went down Atlantic Ave, turned on to Main Street, went under the bridge, and then went down Commercial Street back to the pump station. That's the pipe being pulled under the bridge right there.
Where is that?
This is the Main Street Bridge. That's right in front of the Smiling Cow, probably.
I'm so disoriented.
Yeah.
That's the
So
pipe,
it started at the line started at the C Street pump station.
like by
Then
Lyman
it
Morris.
went
So this is
Went
down
down
Atlantic
So
Avenue and,
this is the other side of the harbor. You go down through here, you go down Atlantic Ave, then you go down Main Street, and then you go down Commercial Street.
well, no, it's a good question because it used to go straight under
But-
the harbor.
Went right across the water.
Okay,
We had to remove it.
okay. So I was like, it was not connecting, so thank you.
Okay. So then Cove Road Pump Station, that was just recently upgraded. So there's 2 pumps, 600 gallons per minute each pump, new 10-inch force main. We have problems over there with the collection system in the Norumbega subdivision. Many of the catch basins, they're these old fiberglass catch basins, and there's a lot of water basically getting into those catch basins and getting into that line through that system. So, like when you look at the wastewater flow, when you pop the manhole right outside the pump station, you can see water just pouring in. And it's not water from a house. It's just groundwater getting in there. And that's part of the thing we're fighting with.
Hold on, when you say catch basin,
Manhole, excuse me.
okay.
Manhole, my mistake. So we're looking at a company to try and reline these manholes and try and make them watertight. That's a fix. The real best way is to replace them.
Hold on, so the water, it's not that there's a crack, it's that,
They're these old segmented fiberglass manhole structures that we have a slug of through
Mhm.
town. And they just aren't watertight because they come in segments and they bolt them together with a flange and then they leak around the flange and then water just kind of pours in, or they got a crack in
like
them.
groundwater?
Groundwater,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Dave, is that like low hanging fruit to replace those? Any idea how much effort and money it
Well,
requires?
we've got a quote. We have a
Big
quote to rehab them, which is something they can do to kind of waterproof them. Significantly less than replacing them.
Okay.
It's probably when we did Pearl Street, we were looking at $5,000 a manhole. We probably got 5-6 of them over there that we would have to do. So
Hold on,
just that one little spot, right?
is that the cost of the material, or that's not the total cost to
It was
replace, is
about
it?
it was about the installation,
labor?
but that was part of a bigger
Yeah.
project. So I think if we were gonna just do a manhole, it would be it'd be a lot more. But that was because we did originally it was a $500,000 project. It turned into a $1.5 million project because we tripled it.
And you kind of have to dig up the road too, at the same,
And
right?
then
It's
then
not
you
like
have
you
the
can
road
just,
piece that you have to fix, and you have other things that go along with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we can get numbers for those things, and we will. That's all part of what we're doing, putting this together so that you guys can make good decisions. So we have the Lake Beat Pump Station, upgraded 2000, just a submersible pump. There's no real generator over there. There's really only two facilities. There's one house that goes to it, and then the bathrooms at Lake Beach.
That's just, I mean, what an expensive thing to have created for,
Yeah,
to,
it's
anyway.
because we couldn't have gravity work for us there, so they had to pump it,
Couldn't have put the bathrooms just like a little higher up by the,
put it on stilts.
oh,
So now we're going into the second group, the other big pump station, which is the Rawson Avenue. So this was upgraded in 2011. It's got a custom dry well, wet well, 3 pumps, 1,400 gallons per minute, 85 kilowatt LP gas generator, 10-inch force main. It's 1,180 feet. It's got emergency bypass. Over here, we have a potential problem with the emergency outfall weir. So there's an emergency outfall weir that dumps into the brook in case we went over capacity of this facility at this pump station. So it would just discharge over there if there was an overflow. What's happened is there must have been some kind of a valve that only let water go out in case of an emergency. And over time, it must have deteriorated and it's no longer functional. And now that water levels are so much higher, the discharge pipe is actually underwater, and water is backing up into that line, going over the weir and then into the pump station. So we've doubled our water volume going to the treatment plant just by this one valve not working.
And it's just river water.
Just river water.
And how can you fix it?
So what we're going to do is, we're going to probably put
the Walton Street Dam.
we're going to probably put 2 pumps in the weir, try to pump it dry, try to plug it maybe from the inside. If we can't do that, then we're going to have to try and attack it from the outside. So hip boots, go out, try to muck around in the brook and find where this pipe is going out, put something on the outside.
So you don't know where the pipe is that has the valve?
It's underwater.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
You
but,
don't want, go ahead, Allison, sorry.
no, sorry, I'm,
There
there,
was a
obviously
fish
there
in
was,
here.
there was a,
There was a fish in the actual weir. So we know it's connected to the
oh
brook.
my gosh, okay, but it wasn't that long ago that we paid $1 bajillion to have that upgraded. We must have drawings and like can't we we should just be able to call up Ray Pierce and say, hey, where's this pipe go?
We know where it goes. We know where it is. It's just underwater. So it's not like we can just go up to it and go, it's right here. It's
Oh, do you want me to film it for you?
well, first of all, I've known about this for a whole 2 weeks. So
Okay.
I haven't had like a lot of time to fix this one problem because there's multiple. We're going to go through a lot of problems here.
Okay.
Dave, your preference is on that one though, your preference is to block it versus replace the valve, the one with
No,
the
we're
valve?
gonna, emergency type of thing, we would block it just because we don't want water coming in. We don't want to pay for all
Mhm,
that
sure,
water.
right.
That'd be first step.
Yeah.
Second step is probably put some type of flapper valve in there so it only goes one way.
Yeah.
We're gonna fix it, and this is an in-house thing that we can do. We're gonna do it quickly. This is something that, this is low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
easy to fix.
Wow.
And of course, this is the pump station where Rockport pumps their waste to as well. Just for a side note.
Mhm.
Would this be the same pump station that the trailer park would need to go to?
No.
No, I'll show you where that one is. Yeah.
Okay.
That one.
You know, it's okay. We can go to it later. It's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the trailer park that
Mhm.
has the problem.
Actually, yes, you're
It
right. No, it
eventually
does go
goes
there.
to it. Yes.
Yeah.
It would get here, yep. Yeah, because like I showed you before, up in here,
Yeah.
you got Rawson Avenue, so you got Washington Street and Mount Batty go to Rawson.
Yeah.
So you are right. Yep.
So we get there via Mount Batty, maybe? The
No,
Mount Batty
it
pump
connect
station?
into the riverside, or sorry, Washington Street.
Washington Street.
Okay.
Okay.
Curious.
So Mount Batty Pump Station, upgraded in 2015, 2 pumps, lag and lead, 600 GPM, no backup generator. Probably has a 10-inch force main, 1,200 linear feet. No standby generator at this location. This probably should have a standby generator here. The plant has a mobile generator that they use, but in the wintertime, you don't want to be dragging I mean, this would be an improvement that we should probably work towards getting an actual backup generator at
I
this
mean, what's the
location.
KW required for something like that for a pump? Is it like, it must be a 3-phase sort of a,
I mean, you can look at the other ones that I've shown here. I mean,
okay, oh,
like an 85 probably.
So every time the power goes out, how long can you wait before?
Sheldon would
Not
be-
very long, because because Washington does have a generator. So the Washington pump station is always pumping towards it, not to mention the houses that just feed to it by gravity. So
So
there's,
Washington pumps into Mount Batty?
yes,
Oh,
And then Mount Batty goes to Rawson?
correct.
Oh, so if the power goes out, somebody rushes into town and gets the generator,
Yes.
drives the generator over to Mount Batty.
That could be 2 a.m. in the morning. That's why I'm saying, it'd probably be good to have a generator here.
Right. And it used to, before we had the generator at Washington Street, it was doing both, getting it to Washington Street, pumping it down, disconnecting it, running it over to Mount Batty, pumping it down, running it back to Washington Street, and just ping-ponging back and forth
Jeez.
most of the night. So just having it at Washington is nice, but yeah, it very much needs one at Mount Batty as well.
So just a ballpark, how long, if somebody didn't go there, how long before you have, would be sewage just overflowing right? Is there an emergency bypass at Mount Batty Street?
There used to be, that was removed during the upgrade, if I remember right. Don't completely quote me on that, but I believe that was the case. It never reached that point. It was never, I think that in the DEP decided to remove that. You have, I mean, there's an hour or two to get there or more sometimes, depending on the time of day. I mean, if it's in the evening, you have a few hours to get there and get the generator hooked up. And now where we don't have to move it, at least now it can be locked up, left running to
so what
do its
size,
thing.
what is, just curious, what's the size of the portable generator?
generator is the 60 kW.
60.
Huh.
The
And so
trailer
if there's
mounted.
no emergency bypass, it just,
Just overflows.
It would just overflow out of the,
wherever the path of least resistance
out
is?
of, it would just come out the top of the wet well.
And then it'd be sort of like contained for a little bit in that building and then it would,
Oh, the tanks are outside the building.
oh,
So just to kind of.
oh, right,
So it would
yeah,
come
yeah,
out here and it would go over there.
right, thanks.
Exactly. I'm very familiar with that spot. That is exactly what it would do. Yes.
Oh,
So then we got the Washington Street. That's just a submersible type of, that's all new, just been updated, upgraded. There's a generator there.
So that's where Molyneux Road would connect to.
so why aren't we just putting a generator in the other one? Like how
We-
much money are we saving by?
Well, we're thinking
I know
about,
it's not you.
we're thinking about doing it, but we're trying to figure out where we're at with the plan upgrade and what we can spend money on and what we can't because of the rural development money. You really can only spend it on certain things.
Huh.
So, but there is a potential that we have some money left over from other things that have happened as a result of the project. So we're waiting to figure that all out. And this would be one of the things we'd want to spend that money on.
Oh, yeah, but sometimes we have to pay for things in our own budget too.
And if we can't do that, we should budget this in next year's budget, is what we're thinking.
Hmm.
So,
do you think that generator would be?
oh geez, I could get you a number. I'd be,
5,000?
no,
No, more than that. I mean, my 13 KW was 5,000.
Yeah.
13 KW.
I mean, here.
So give us like
No idea.
$1 million.
Less than 100,000, more than 50.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
okay, so that's why they haven't done it, because it's pretty expensive.
significant.
Installed, it might be 100.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we might not have everything to transfer
That's right.
over.
Right, well, I figured it was gonna be big.
Yeah, because you need a concrete slab for those.
Right.
Jeez.
So this is where I'm gonna hand it over to Sheldon, and Sheldon's gonna sit in the driver's seat right here, and he's gonna go through the treatment plant facility, where he's gonna go over what happens over there. So I'm gonna slide over here.
Yeah, maybe we'll come in the middle of the night for a little longer.
All right, just using the
turns.
little buttons.
Yeah, you can just air it down.
So the treatment plant as it stands was built in 1970 and located at 20 Lions Lane on about 5.1 acres of land, if you don't know where it's located. We are currently licensed for an average monthly flow of 1.21 million gallons a day. And the average flow over the last 12 months was just over a million at 1.63 million gallons per day. The average low flow or a dry weather sort of flow was around about 6.6 million gallons per day. And the flow, just to give you a little bit of an idea of how things fluctuate greatly, even with a little bit of rain. This past weekend, we received about 0.6 inches of rain. And the day prior to getting that rain, we were at about 500,000 gallons of flow per day. And directly after that rain, it shot up to 0.75. So, a 200,000, almost 200,000 gallon flow increase. And on April 30th of this year, we had a rather substantial rainstorm of 4 inches, and the plant received 3.07 million gallons that day, with a peak flow of 6.19 million gallons coming through the plant. And that happens within about an hour or two after the rain really starts. Once there's, say, hit 1-2 inches of rain, the flow just skyrockets off the charts. And then it levels itself back out again, which is the sort of the two phases of I&I. The inflow, water coming in storm drains that are tied in that we don't know about, things like that. That water comes in very quickly, obviously, because it's a large pipe. So the flow goes up very quickly. Then that kind of subsides and it drops back down, but it stays reasonably high for quite a while with the infiltration part of just getting in cracks in pipes and people's sump pumps and things like that. So more gradual flow, but it keeps the numbers high for an extended period of time. And
We'll go right to the facility.
what's that?
You can skip those two.
Oh, yeah. And so, I think prior to, I don't have it on here, but the day before that 4 inches of rain, I think we were in the 1 million or so, 1 million plus flow. So a substantial amount with 4 inches of rain. And we currently have 5 employees, the facility operations director, myself, 2 plant operators, excuse me, who both have grade 3 wastewater licenses, a treatment plant mechanic who has his grade 3 license as well, and 1 centrifuge running individual who runs our centrifuge. And he also works as an assistant mechanic.
What's the differences in a grade 1 versus 2, 3? How many grades are there?
The size of the plant primarily. I think there are some other factors, but that's sort of the simplest answer.
In the test that you take
Yeah.
to get the license.
Right. I didn't know, is it grade 3 good? Is it bad? Is it?
1 through 5, 5 being the largest plant. So
Okay.
middle of the road, so to
Does it
speak.
concern you that we're only 20% off what we're licensed on the flow?
Yes. Yes.
And
that
what
is-
does it require to go to, what's the next license?
That's not how they do it. They want you to reduce your flow. They don't want to give you more
and
potential discharge.
right, and then that can be done, and that sounds like the simple answer. Well, we'll just up the license and we'll go to
Right.
1.5. But then there's so many other ancillary things that go along with that. The testing requirements change, and it's not the easy fix that it sounds.
So
discharge, yeah.
what's the impact with adding Rockport to this and that license? Or
They're
no?
part of that right now.
So there's not incremental that it's going to cause, the Rockport piece. That's
I mean,
not-
Rockport's part of that data. whatever
Okay,
they're giving us.
yeah.
Right.
So and then,
But when Rockport says it's going to, when they're doing their big expansion projects, that's why we start to say, oh, well, hold on, how much do we want to expand? How much does Rockport want to expand?
So Sheldon, in order to go higher than 1.21 million gallons per day, I mean, we would have to upgrade the plant again, correct?
Well, the plant is designed, I think, to handle a maximum of 7 million gallons per day.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And you know, peak flows of around 2, I think, or average high flows of around 2. So, I mean, the plant itself can handle it.
Okay.
In
Even
simple
if
terms.
even though we tore down that, what do we call it? The dome that was for extra storage?
Yes, and that was extra storage as far as running the press back when they still had the press, and they didn't have the. I think that was built back in the day, if I am not mistaken, of when they would use the drying beds. So obviously in the winter months, you couldn't use the drying bed. So that was merely a storage for the off season, essentially.
Oh, interesting. But we can't just increase the amount of, is that right?
So I kind of want to speak to that. So one of the things that we have a consent agreement with the DEP, and it's because we have inflow and infiltration coming into our
You
system.
might want to put your microphone on.
So they're gonna say, well, yeah.
Turned it off. Sorry.
They're gonna say, we want you to fix your system, because basically, and I'll get into why, but we're not gonna give you more capacity to discharge into the harbor when you have a problem with your collection system. They're gonna say, fix your collection system and you'll have all kinds of capacity. That's what they're gonna say. And when they start calculating additional capacity discharge into a receiving body of water, there's all kinds of science that goes into it. It's a mass balance calculation that says, X amount of pollutant can be accepted into the receiving body based on the limiting factors of the body. And it's not that easy. They don't willingly give up more discharge capacity to a water body without putting in more improvements to the facility, limiting you and making you test more, as Sheldon was saying. It's not an easy thing.
And I guess that's, we have this conversation about plant capacity a lot. And, when we've had the discussions with Rockport, there's the plant has plenty of capacity, which, Sheldon's explaining, that's not the problem what the plant can handle, but it's our permit that we're always.
Right. He's going to go over that
Considering.
too.
And on the simple question of, well, now that we did the work on Pearl Street, have we noticed a difference? And I guess that would probably be no.
No, that's not accurate. That's Sheldon, why don't you give him
Let's
Now that
keep
you
going
did-
through and then
Yeah,
we'll get
okay,
to that.
sure.
And one other thing I'd like to make sure we cover, if I forget seasonal, I'd like to know summer. We do have a higher population in the summer, so I hope we get some data on that as well.
But since most of our flow isn't driven by, intentional
People.
stuff, right? It's driven so strongly by inflow and infiltration. It's more based on how much precipitation we're getting than how many people are in town.
Is that accurate in most?
Yeah, I mean, I would say during the summer, as long as it's dry, there's no rain, our flow goes way down, irregardless of numbers in town. Our flow numbers drop. It's really rain, snow melt, those things when we see our flows increase. There are some other things that perhaps increase in the summer. Biochemical oxygen demand on the receiving waters and things like that, stronger influent coming in. But as far as actual flow numbers, it's generally down just because the weather's dry. I'm sure if on a even playing field, if there was no I&I, then yes, I'm sure seeing many new people coming in the summer, but it's nothing compared to the I&I. And so throughout the facility, we have a brand new laboratory with obviously various testing equipment to help us meet our requirements from the DEP. We have a camera van used for televising and recording sewer and stormwater lines, a jetting truck with a root cutter for maintaining the collection system, portable generator that we spoke of earlier, a four-wheel drive tractor for moving drums of chemical around, oftentimes snow removal, so forth, fork truck, Same thing, loading, unloading, heavy deliveries that come in, a 3/4 ton pickup truck with a lift gate, a 1-ton dump truck, a small Ford Transit van, and a 1/2-ton pickup as well. And so here's a nice snapshot of some of the permit and regulation requirements that we have. Again, like I spoke of, we have a monthly average requirement of 1.21 million gallons a day. Some of the various things we have to meet with the DEP. We have to test for biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD, once a week, and there are some requirements, a monthly average of 30 milligrams per liter and a removal of 85%. And basically what that means, we test both the oxygen demand on the influent coming in, and then we measure the effluent going out. And you obviously want to see that oxygen demand removed from the influent, and what's going out to the harbor, because you don't want to starve the marine life of oxygen, obviously. And it's the very simplified rundown of it. Total suspended solids as well, basically just exactly as it sounds, just removing the solids from the influent and the effluent. Same basic parameters, about 85% removal minimum. Test for settlable solids twice a week, which is a much more simplified version of that, essentially just in a large cone, influent, effluent, making sure that one's clean, one's not, ideally. We test for fecal coliform bacteria. We just ended that, as a matter of fact. This one is actually done. Correct. This must have been, I thought I grabbed the current one, but it's right now we go from April 15th to October 31st. And so that just ended this past month, and we test for that once a week.
So Sheldon could probably explain that part of it. So it's a disinfection process. So that permit, you might want to talk about that part. And
Right. So obviously we have to disinfect during those warmer months. We have to disinfect the effluent to treat the bacteria that may remain. And so it's essentially just testing to make sure that there's just a minimum amount of bacteria left going to the receiving water.
So we're still only doing that seasonally?
We are, because when this past winter, we were doing the upgrade, and so they had to remove pretty much most of the items that we use, the pumps essentially that we use to transfer the bleach from here to there. So it would have required setting up drums outside on our little partial flume, and it just was not possible due to cold weather and so forth. And now this winter, where we have it's all back inside, the new pumps, everything, we're just waiting essentially for the new permit, which should be coming out. We should be hearing the preliminary permit, or seeing the preliminary permit any day or week now, which I suspect, I don't know, but I would suspect will just say that we need to chlorinate year round, because many communities do. So we're just anticipating that will be the case.
So for years, I've asked about this, because people write me, it seems like every year, expressing concern about the polar plunges and all of that stuff, and saying, like Maine Healthy Beaches, people that have worked for them, saying we shouldn't really be encouraging that because we have a wastewater outfall right there. And I thought we were start chlorinating. I think maybe Dave was saying before that he was expecting we were going to be forced to, and so that's why it was going to happen. It feels like we know that's the direction that we need to go in. So at some point, I would like to have a conversation about doing that, even before we're potentially forced to do it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Is there a large cost associated with doing that?
There is a large cost. I mean, it's about, 30, 40 gallons of hypochlorite per day, and then you have to remove that hypochlorite at the end of the system using sodium bisulfite. So that's another 11 to 15 gallons a day to remove it out of the system. So
Does that basically cost about?
I don't have that number at the
Okay.
top of my head, but
Is it
it's
millions?
easy to get, but I just don't have it.
Okay.
And so then once you're doing that, then that requires to test for it every day. And, so there's just so many other, it's not as simple as, okay, we're just chlorinating now. Well, now we have to, get permission from the DEP to be emptying that amount of chemical into the harbor when we weren't licensed to do so. And, do we need to keep testing for fecal if we're doing that? And, there's a lot of, it brings up a lot of questions that are answerable, but. And so tying into that, during chlorination season, like I said, we have to remove the sodium hypochlorite from the system using sodium bisulfite. So we have to test the residual chlorine down at Bayview. And there's a minimum monthly average and a minimum daily max that we have to follow. And we have to test for that 5 days a week. pH is another one that we test 4 or 5 days a week, and mercury once a year.
And that's all done in that lab that you now have?
Yes, everything except mercury. We take the sample, but that gets sent out to another lab. And there are a couple surveillance year tests and things that happen, on year 2 of your 5-year permit that are a little more involved. But there again, we don't do it. We just take the sample and we send it out to the lab.
So I just checked the budget. So basically the way I see it is we've budgeted about $50,000 to disinfect during the months, which is roughly 6 to 7 months. So you basically double that. So $50,000 double $100,000. It'll be an additional $50,000 roughly for treatment year round.
Good round number.
And if it's when it's cold, the bacteria are dormant, right?
Correct.
It only becomes a problem if you're like the people that like to swim year round and they swallow a little bit of it and then it becomes warm again in their intestines. And
Right.
of course, sometimes nothing happens at all, but
I'd be far more worried of the dogs and geese than I would with our effluent. But that's just me. If I was swimming down there, that would be one of my probably priority number one.
I think there's more stuff though too than just anyway, we can forward you some emails that it would be nice to know. There are a couple of people that have been really, really concerned and haven't known how to, maybe I could forward that to the DEP and ask them. But
I mean, do we do any fecal coliform testing in non-disinfection times?
No.
So, I mean,
so we just have no idea what's going out there.
so
Basically.
that's something you could do just to kind of know what it is. Maybe so you could do some testing, and if you saw the fecal coliform, because part of the reason originally why they didn't require disinfection during those times of the years is you don't have the growth associated with warmer weathers.
Mm-hmm.
So, there is the potential that you may not have, significant bacteria. And there's also there's also the possibility that you would use less chemical because it's the winter months too. So that 50, I doubled it, but
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
right.
close enough for now.
Yeah.
But we could do a test just to see for our own purposes. It's not a permit requirement, but we could see what it is if we had to. Right,
It's like when it gets warm, I think is
right.
So this is just a quick sort of snapshot of the average things that go on at the wastewater treatment plant. We perform daily laboratory sampling and testing. That's every day, at least half the day. 1 or 2 of us generally are tied up doing that. Daily plant process checklist, going through, making sure, pumps are running, everything's working as it should, which is, I'll get into that a little more when we talk about our new SCADA system, which allows us to sort of see everything using the computer or tablets. It makes that much easier. Once daily, we go to the 2 main pump stations, Bayview and Rawson, and perform preventative maintenance, running the pumps, raking the bar screens, making sure the flow is okay, making sure that a bunch of grease hasn't come in like in that picture and things like that.
Can you tell? Can you tell by the flow of where you're getting constraints from?
Not so much as far as you wouldn't necessarily notice it at the plant, but as soon as you get to the pump station, you'll notice that it's starting to sort of overflow that little bar rack, and you know that there's probably a lot of rags or grease that came through. Usually rags would be the bigger problem, except for when we jet down in that Bayview area, which is probably what caused all that grease in that picture. Knowing that that's a sort of a hot spot for grease, once or 2 or 3 times a year, we'll go down and jet that thoroughly and break up all the grease. Preventative maintenance on the plant process equipment, changing oil in blowers and pumps and so forth. Collection system jetting and camera work. Flow meter installation is going on right now and monitoring in various basins throughout the collection area. Hot spots that we know or we suspect are getting I&I. Dig safe requests come in daily from contractors, and additional sampling and testing for PFAS, which there'll be another whole round of that coming up here within the next month or two. I think we worked with the DEP and we have about 11 testing sites. I think we're going to test for every other week for a short period of time. So we did a sort of a broader PFAS sampling run over the summer where we just tested the effluent in an outside lab. We collected the samples, they did the lab work on it. And so now the state and many collection systems did it throughout the state, many treatment plants, I should say, and some private businesses did it throughout the state. So now they're looking at, well, we know these facilities have PFAS in them. Some basically had next to none, but the vast majority had some. They know some have a lot, but they're really kind of looking at the sort of the middle of the road groups like us, and now picking some strategic spots to kind of decide, well, where's the PFAS coming from? Is it just coming from everything, which it most likely is, or are there just some hot spots that, maybe some businesses, we don't really have many businesses that would affect the PFAS or wastewater in our watershed, but
Just one.
It's the
Just
leachate from the landfill. We can just say it.
Which one?
You're being very diplomatic.
So diplomatic.
The Midco Solid Waste, the landfill, we've been required to test for PFAS there for much longer than the treatment plant. So we have, 2 years of data? And the numbers are significantly higher than the numbers in our effluent at the treatment plant. So,
but that's basically every landfill throughout the state.
That's
I mean,
true.
it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like Camden is an anomaly by any stretch. It's every.
oh yeah, it's all treatment. And, well, actually, believe it or not, we're a little bit on the higher end of some of the landfills, not the highest,
Mhm.
but all the treatment plants that receive landfill leachate in the state showed up on the higher end of the list, just like
Right.
us. So I'm pretty sure that they're probably going to track that down pretty fast. But so one thing we might want to do is require Midco Solid Waste at some point to do pre-treatment.
So
I'm
just,
kind of,
they measure this in the parts per trillion.
mhm.
Like the landfill's 1,000 parts per trillion.
And what, we're like 60 was our average for the treatment plant.
So it gets diluted by the time it gets to the treatment plant because it's so much more volume, but it's still significant. We'll figure it out.
So now we'll get to basically the process flow. So red arrow's right there, and it actually comes in. That's from Bayview Pump Station. Rawson comes across right in between the substation and the tanks right here, and that comes across as well. And they both meet where the arrow turns, and all the flow comes down and goes into this building, which is brand new as part of the upgrade, our Headworks building, where we have basically it's a, how do I want to describe it?
It's
It
mechanical.
picks up the rags
Yeah.
and collects the rags, and it dumps them into this thing called the Headworks screw pactor, where it basically compresses all the rags while it rinses them, and it basically cleans them up so they can be disposed of, and it tightens them all up into a nice little package that can be removed to the dump easily.
It's the first physical treatment process in the treatment train, basically taking out the large items.
And so once the rags have been removed, or hopefully all the rags have been removed, it goes to a small tank that is heavily aerated. That's the grit chamber removal. So it's getting rid of rocks and dirt and any heavy items. Hopefully are going to instantly sink to the bottom where it's heavily aerated. And it will leave there, and then it starts into the aeration tanks, which will be mixed with the return sludge from the clarifiers, which we'll get to in a minute. And so the first two tanks it goes through are not aerated heavily. There is just large bubble aeration that goes through. It pulses every 4 or 5 seconds maybe. And it's just enough to keep everything suspended and a small amount of oxygen, because we're looking to remove nitrogen from the wastewater. So as the new sludge or the sludge is coming in and mixing with the influent, the bugs that are coming from the return sludge are very hungry because they've been in the clarifier. They've already done their job. They've ate all the food. So they're looking for more food and oxygen as well. And so they are latching on to the new influent that's coming in. And the easiest way to do that for them, or in that case where we're not heavily aerating it, they're latching on to the nitrogen molecules and basically separating the nitrogen from the oxygen that they need. And the nitrogen just gets released into the atmosphere harmlessly. And from there, it goes into the next two set of tanks, concurrent tanks, where there are fine bubble diffusers aerating. There's small little plastic discs down at the bottom, hundreds of them with little pinholes in them that the air is forced up through. And that heavily mixes the liquid, the solids, the sludge, and gets the DO, the dissolved oxygen numbers back up while mixing. And then from there, it goes into both tanks split into those clarifiers, sort of the final stage where all the solids will slowly sink to the bottom. The clean effluent goes over the top weirs, and they both meet up and head back towards the front of the plant, where during chlorination season, we will inject hypochlorite into the system bleach, essentially 15% sodium hypochlorite, and that turbulent mixing and the piping from that point of the plant all the way down to the harbor is essentially the contact chamber of the bleach being able to do its thing all the way down, and where it's removed right at the last stage, right down at the Bayview pump station. So once all those solids have settled, they have to go somewhere. Otherwise, it would just be, you'd be overflowing the tanks, and you'd never have any clean effluent. So we have to make some decisions based on how the process is going, how much we want to return to the front to bring it back up to repeat the whole process again. And it's basically not plausible to do that 100%, obviously. Some of it we have to get rid of. So a percentage of that gets sent over to these two tanks. And usually there are two tanks there. We have the availability of only using one, which is nice. So
What are those called again?
The digester tanks. They're not, we still call them the digester tanks, but they're not true digesters. They're not breaking down the waste and creating methane and that whole thing. They're essentially just aerated storage tanks. We just call them the digester tanks because originally that's what they were, and they just
Did they used to create methane to be?
I'm sure they did. It was never processed or anything, but
Could we?
now I mean, the tanks would need to be covered.
Right.
And I mean, it's a whole different process to what we do. Like I say, it's just an aerated storage tank because we have the centrifuge now. We used to have a belt filter press, which is basically like the machines they used to make wine too. It's just 2 belts that would squeeze all the moisture or all the water out of the sludge. Now we have a new centrifuge, which I'll show a picture of that in a little bit. Essentially accomplishes the same thing, only much more effectively by spinning the sludge at very high speeds, separating the water from the sludge. And that is where our new lab is located as well. So that and the processed sludge then gets hauled away to the Juniper Ridge facility.
Oh, wow.
We sell our organics.
Contributing to their high PFAS levels
Yes,
and
right, yes.
subsequently to the Bangor wastewater treatment plants.
Where is Juniper Ridge? Where's that one?
Or no.
I thought it was like
By Hamden.
yeah, Hamden, you passed.
Okay.
Can we talk about the nitrogen? Can we backtrack a little bit? Do you have any idea how much nitrogen we're releasing from those 2 tanks?
As far
What?
as releasing,
Oh.
I don't know. We have just started, and if I thought I would have brought the test results, we did a voluntary study with the DEP testing how much nitrogen we have in our system. It was not high. I do remember that. But as part of sort of the looking forward, when Wright Pierce designed the treatment plant, they added those anoxic zone tanks for nitrogen treatment, just knowing that that was the direction that the DEP was heading, that everybody was going to have to be treating nitrogen and doing nitrogen removal. So it's sort of
How does it-
preemptively taking care of that.
Why is that important? Why is the nitrogen removal important?
Algae blooms.
Nitrogen is a key contributor to
To the algae bloom?
to greenhouse gas emissions.
Oh.
No, I don't
Both,
think, is
actually.
it?
Yeah, you got algal blooms and greenhouse gas, and also there's the fact that we could be starting to get more regulated more strictly with our permit levels for nitrogen. That was one of the reasons why they implemented the nitrogen processing portion into this.
Would we have to capture it? Or
That's an
are we, have we
effluent, though.
preempted it?
That's in the effluent. Oh, you're talking about
Yeah,
I thought it
off-gassing
was-
nitrogen. I was wondering that. I was
I
wondering,
thought they said that
yeah,
was harmless.
yeah,
It's not, no,
Well,
No.
definitely not.
No, but-
in a sense of harmless to us.
right.
On a,
It's a greenhouse gas.
yeah, but it's definitely, it's a potent greenhouse gas.
Right, but methane is even a more
Methane more, so.
more strong greenhouse gas, which is coming off of the digester.
I wonder if we can capture that nitrogen. It's a valuable ingredient in fertilizer. I mean, most fertilizer is based on nitrogen.
You'd have to have like a nitrogen stripping type
Yeah,
of thing, some kind
I know,
of.
it's like outside the box, I have no idea.
But for the discharge portion, it's what Chris was saying is that when you're putting a fertilizer in the ocean and you're basically just creating algal blooms.
Huh.
And that's one of the reasons why they're regulating how much nitrogen you can discharge into. Phosphorus is the one for lakes, nitrogen's the one for ocean.
Oh, interesting.
So, but by taking it out of the water, we're putting more into the air.
Yeah.
But,
There's no free lunch.
Right.
do we measure the amount of methane that comes off of there like you do at the landfill, or
No, there's no.
you take that landfill thing over there and? or
I
is
mean,
that
you could
not?
use AP 42 emission calculation factors and figure out the amount of methane coming off of the digester. You could do that. You could do the same thing with nitrogen. It's a spreadsheet basically that the DEP uses, and you plug in your factors and it gives you your emission rates. But we're not required to do it. No one usually signs up for that because it's really complicated. Nobody likes to do it. Not
That'd be a
saying we-
good project for an intern or something, or
Yeah,
when they did all those, the watershed school did all that stuff, that we never even touched on gases in the air and what might be coming off of our, did we? I don't.
No.
I never thought about that. That's interesting.
I mean, I
thought.
kind of wondered why this wasn't like a part of it, the gas capturing portion, but that's,
Well,
it would have been a lot more money too, you know, I mean, that's the other part of it.
It
Some
sort
of us
depends on
asked
the
about that a lot.
Volume. If it's high volume, I mean, it really ought to be part of the DEP process. I just don't know if it's a ton or 10 tons or,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and like I say, I don't have the numbers to quantify that, so can't speak to it at the moment.
Is sludge the bigger current problem?
As far as like PFAS goes?
Where's it gonna go? Yeah,
Could be.
Yes, yeah, that is a continuous problem.
because aren't they having issues? I remember seeing something in the news 6-8 months ago about somebody not accepting it anymore.
Mhm.
I didn't know if that was the Juniper Ridge
So
area or,
it used to be that instead of going to Juniper Ridge, it would go to Casella,
Hawk
Organics and
Ridge.
Unity, and then
Yeah.
land spread.
As
Yeah, they made
fertilizer.
compost out of it, and then they were land spreading it. And that's when they started finding a lot of this contaminated PFAS levels in fields and stuff like that, where it was land applied and where compost was used. So now they're going around testing all those sites where we put all this stuff, not we, but
yeah.
where that stuff got put. And
Well, actually, Camden was,
Well, we were part of it.
Pioneers.
yeah, we did it. We land applied before I mean, you probably know
we
more
sold
about
it to people, like Camden came up with the idea, but it was a good idea,
Yeah.
that people would take it, put it in their gardens and.
the chemical companies wouldn't have made a bad
Exactly.
chemical that poisoned our sludge. We'd be all set.
Right, it would be,
Or in the landfills, the same thing. You know, they basically put chemicals in the things we put in the landfill, like that
But
contaminate
of
the
the things
landfill.
we've talked about thus far, the most pressing thing is the I&I thing.
I think
Thus far.
I think it's multiple things. I think it's the I&I. I think it's the future disposal of sludge. I think it's going to be the cost of chemicals. I think it's going to be, you know, what our new permit says.
Mhm,
There could be
mhm.
something in our permit that they require us to do that we're maybe not prepared for.
Hmm.
But we won't know that until.
Okay.
Yeah. But you're right. Probably the biggest problem is the I&I.
that's what I would say the DEP thinks is our biggest problem, right?
Mhm.
Mhm, mhm. So one of the bigger portions of the upgrade is having a computer system now, basically, that's able to control most of the items that are happening within the treatment plant, or at least monitoring them, if not able to control them outright. So this is just an example of one of the screens that is invaluable to the operator who's on call, especially when you're at home. We can see what's going on. We can now see that the aeration tanks, what the DO levels are, which pumps are running, what the levels are in various tanks. You know, this is just a small sampling of what we can look on. Just about anything that's up there, we could click on and get more in-depth info about. Some stuff can be controlled. You could control the level of how much the blowers are running, when they're turning on, when
So
they're turning off.
is that just a screenshot of an active?
That's just the screenshot.
Of a dashboard that you have, one of your,
Correct, exactly.
so you're monitoring for the numbers and the different pieces.
Exactly.
Things
And-
go red to green when things are bad or something?
Yes, exactly. Green when they're running, red when they're off. And it's not shown on this screen, but right above that screen, any alarms that come in, which we're obviously notified of separately, but you can see what the alarm is on the screen, which then also allows you to go and instantly look at, you know, the alarm is on whatever zone, but at least the pump is running. It's still pumping 120 gallons a minute. So you know you have to come in and address the issue, whatever it is, but at least it gives you some peace of mind that things are happening that are supposed to be happening. There's just perhaps there was a power hiccup or something.
So is it 24 hour, we don't have somebody on staff 24 hours
No.
looking at this.
No.
And do you guys mostly work the 8 to 5? Is that your schedule?
7 to 4. And then, so there's 3 of us who are on call, and we just, rotate that every other week. And so we have an iPad to take home with us, and, you can monitor the thing, and we obviously get the alarms as they come in.
How often do you have to do something in the off hours? Besides just looking, but how often do you really have to do something?
Probably like this past week, I was just on call. I had to come in, I think, 2 or 3 times. And during rain events, it's a given. You're probably going to have to come in, not for, if it rains a quarter of an inch, you're going to be fine, or even an inch. But if it's like this, I was just looking when we were discussing about what the weather was going to be on Wednesday, and it said 1 to 2 inches of rain. Somebody might have to end up coming in for that.
Your pump stations is on here too, right?
Yes, exactly. And so that's another portion that just isn't shown on here. We can look at all of the pump stations, the centrifuge when it's running. Basically, every piece of equipment is tied into this one way or another.
And it records everything. The heating system's on there.
And is this, how new is this sort of monitoring
new.
system?
Very new. Prior to the upgrade, we never had.
Like 2 years ago, or
It's been sort of going on over the last
right now?
Like,
Okay.
right. It's
Wow.
like
just all part of this upgrade. So it's been happening slowly over the past 1.5, 2 years or so, and it's finally almost bug free. But prior to that, we had nothing. Just some of the pieces of equipment would send out alarms, but you didn't necessarily know what was going on. You just knew that there would be an alarm with the return pumps, or you knew vaguely what was going on when you got an alarm. And here's the new lab, or a portion of the new lab, where, like I say, we do all of our daily, weekly, monthly testing. And which is very nice, because now it's just solely dedicated for the lab. Before it was the lab / office / break room / meeting place, whatever.
Has it been big enough?
Yes, it's very adequate. It's very nice. And this is the headworks and the bar screen and the screw pactor that I mentioned before. And so the influent comes here, and then there's just a continuous bar screen that's always picking. It measures the flow sort of downstream and upstream. Once it rises up a little, it kicks it on. The bar screen moves it in here where there are little water jets that, as it's compacting it and it's moving it back and forth at timed intervals, constantly spraying it, cleaning it, tightening it up, and then it comes out, works its way up that chute where we have just a trash receptacle, because we don't get a ton of flow. There's not it's not a constant stream coming out of there. It's not like we need a huge dumpster right there. Just a small, regular 55-gallon trash barrel is sufficient. But this is removing far more rags, and our old system was just a sort of a archaic grinder pump that would just catch stuff and grind it up as it goes along. And then it would essentially just spit it out the backside in a smaller form, but then they would just kind of reform themselves again and have to be removed manually from the aeration tanks once a year. We would clean them out. They'd have to be picked out by hand, essentially, and it would be just buckets and buckets and buckets of rags. So
Literal rags.
yeah, rags, big flushable wipes. I mean, some actual rags, and then a lot of flushable wipes.
flushable and
I didn't know if
non-flushable.
that was
People
added.
flush all kinds of, they flush
It's-
diapers
it's
and
good.
just,
It's totally fine.
Diapers.
Rag-like things
I don't
come
know.
through.
Respect for. Just.
And this is the new generator. It's a 400 kilowatt generator for the treatment plant that covers the whole treatment plant. And that is another thing that we never had before. There was no backup generator at the plant at all. So when power went out, we would bring a small generator just to run the hypochlorite pumps so that treatment would always be happening, but everything else, the plant will function on its own just by gravity for quite a while. The problem is you're not getting the mixing because of the aeration. And so after a while, it starts to turn anoxic, the bugs start to die, and there's odor associated with that and everything. But what saved us in the past, it's nothing to rely on, but what worked out for us in the past is just being so near to the school and the substation and everything else. We tended to get power back fairly quickly, but it's obviously nothing that we want. We don't want to rely on that. And this is the new centrifuge for sludge dewatering that I spoke of, that it just spins the sludge at super high speed, separating the solids from the water, and then it works itself up on a conveyor, emptying out into a large container that gets hauled away by Casella maybe once a week. I think we have been averaging, as opposed to 2 or 3 times a week with the old filter press. And we measure the percent solids in the sludge. And the old filter press, on an exceptional day, we might get a percent solid of around like 14 or 15% of solids content, whereas now it's up to 22, 23, probably I'll just say the average of 22%. So I think it was like a 60 some odd % increase in cake dryness.
With the generator, no need to go back a slide, just a quick question. Are we getting any complaints? I imagine there must be a time of day when you're running the generator just to run it.
Right.
For
So
15 minutes?
Tuesday mornings at 8:15, I think it comes on. I haven't heard of any complaints yet.
That's good.
But
Okay, I was just
yeah.
curious because it makes noise.
Yeah, it does.
Oh,
This,
we're very close to it, and there's a lot of trees. And it's amazing, like, my dad lives right across the river there, and there just aren't a lot of treatment plant, even talking to all the neighbors, nobody ever complains about.
Yeah.
I don't know if you get complaints, but it's pretty,
Well, yeah, it's quite quiet. It's
And-
kind of funny, actually. It makes more noise probably just doing its routine weekly run, because
That's what I mean,
it doesn't
yeah.
have a load on it,
Right.
and there's a flapper on the exhaust, and it's not enough exhaust essentially and it kind of taps every now and then, and it makes noise when there's been an actual power outage and the generator's having to actual work a little bit. That stops.
So your generator's been used the last couple of months, a couple of times.
Yes, there have been. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, there's been a few times. Yeah, it's been very nice.
So the waste coming out of here, it's about 15 to 20 tons a week.
Hmm.
And before that, it was roughly 3 times a week, right?
Yeah.
Really?
So
Mhm. And much, the containers leaving were much heavier because the solids there was a lot more water in the solids. So
what do we do with the old thing? That belt?
that is for sale if you would like it.
Really?
It is it's still sitting there.
That's gotta be worth,
we're working on selling it. Yeah.
that's like the grinder at the transfer station.
Right.
Is it must be expensive, right? No?
It's what someone will pay for it, I
Are you
guess.
putting it out to,
Yeah, I mean, not everybody wants a sludge press.
but is it being, I know,
I think
but
it's Madison was looking at it, right?
Yes, Anson Madison.
That's good.
is it advertised or?
I've got a call into him about seeing if he wants to buy it.
I mean, is
But-
it equipment?
We'd have to
people
put it
want?
out to bid. We'd have to put it out to bid.
I mean, we should,
You got to look for a buyer. It's not like something that people are going to be lining up to,
Right.
I want one of those.
well,
Fast, you better get it now.
I don't know, that, I would have thought that about the grinder too, but
Maybe, I don't know. Well,
Anyway,
we'll find out.
so it's not as heavy anymore, so that's good.
No, and noticeably
Yeah.
different. Even just looking at it, you can tell. Whereas before, it was very, I don't want to say like mud, but very, very wet like that. Whereas now it just crumbles when it falls out of the chute. It was night and day different. And before, on a full, say, 8-hour day, we could process probably maybe 23,000 gallons of sludge. Now, on a good day, we could easily do 45,000 gallons in that same 8-hour period. Which means, so a lot of times we'll only run it 2 times a week versus
Really?
3 or 4 times a week.
Huh.
And
So there's a lot of extra capacity, you're saying?
there's a lot of extra capacity, and this system is much more user-friendly. The SCADA
Mhm.
software that I showed you before, everything, it sort of runs itself. And obviously, you want to check on it every now and then, but it really frees up the individual to do other things that before you were really kind of tied to that old filter press because it was very fickle, and it would change. The process itself would change throughout the day, and you might have to add, because you have to add polymer to the system to help bind the sludge. And so it would be constant having to add a little more, a little less. And it was just.
And this takes care of itself?
Yeah, and this takes care of itself.
That's awesome.
And that brings up collection system. We're back.
Good job,
Dave
Sean.
again.
That was really informative. So, okay, we're back to our favorite part, the wastewater collection system. So this table right here, this graphic shows a lateral, an Orangeburg lateral, and some of the clay tile pipe, like what the condition looked like. So, just imagine that being below the water table and how much water is probably going into that pipe when you have miles of that pipe. So this table 3.3 shows the current inventory of our system. So we have 45,653 linear feet of gravity sewer line that's between 0 and 25 years of age. Just for reference, 50 to 80 years is the average lifespan of clay tile pipe in a good environment. So
you're saying we've got 40,000 feet.
So we've
That
got
elderly.
roughly 45,653 feet of stuff that doesn't really need to be repaired right now. Doesn't have a replacement life. But then we have 45,573 that's right in the category of probably needing replacement. And then we have
30,000. That's
between 51 and 75. We have 12,027 linear feet of pipe that's between 51 and 75, which is way
I mean,
beyond.
if you were saying if it was $50,000 is 50,000, but 50 years is the max, we've got
close to
40,000 feet over that.
Yeah, or if you look at the percentages there, we're close to 50% of our pipe is over the age of where it needs to be replaced.
Yep.
That's what this message is basically saying, this graphic is showing. And it also talks about the force main here, but that's not the lion's share of the system. It's mostly gravity. If you look over here, the next table 3.5 shows the type of material that each of the types of pipe is made up of and the percentages of that. You can see that the clay pipe is 50%, which kind of falls in line with what we need to replace.
Mhm.
So,
Well, can you go back to that chart just real quick?
Mhm.
So the stuff that's 76 years old
Mhm.
and beyond, what did they make that stuff out of? Is that the clay stuff or
probably
is
the
that
clay,
the
yeah,
clay?
yeah.
And versus the
Orangeburg and clay.
what was the cardboard type stuff?
The
Which one was that?
Orangeburg, yeah, that we don't have a lot of mains made out of Orangeburg. It's mostly laterals.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
So this is just talking about mains
the
here.
mains, yeah.
Okay.
Mains. I just showed the lateral in there because that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
So, what is inflow and infiltration? Infiltration is basically groundwater entering through the source system through leaking pipes and manholes. Usually highest in the spring when the groundwater levels are high. This year, it's been basically all year. Inflow is stormwater entering the system through direct connections, such as catch basins, roof drains, sub pumps, foundation drains. The flow in sewers increases quickly during rain events through the inflow sources. So this graphic right here shows there was some flow meters put in, and you can see how that blue line spike is basically showing the rainfall.
Okay.
And then the flow, you can see the flow just skyrocketing when we get those rain events, which is a clear indication of inflow and infiltration. Because normally if the pipe was sealed, you wouldn't see that spike when it rains. It would just be flat like everything else. So this is a graphic. I think it basically shows the whole house on the right shows how things should be. This house on the left shows how everything in Camden is right now. So, we have, broken lines, cross connections, that are tying into the main roof, roots penetrating the pipe, compromising the pipe, storm drains tied into the stormwater system, cross connections between stormwater systems into the sewer system, cracked pipes, cracked manholes, leakage around the rims of the structures. Those are all contributing sources to the problem.
And now, sorry.
So, okay. So this right here, I just want to give you this is an interesting little, so see how the water, can you see how the water's coming in over there?
It's just right through the wall of the
Coming right through the
manhole.
wall of the concrete.
Oh my
Coming
gosh.
through the crack over here. And that is a good example of how, you just imagine 500 of these leaking a little bit, it just contributes to a huge amount of water. So then you have,
And not even just the
not even a hole or
cracks,
anything.
like some of it just,
hydraulically being forced through the concrete.
wow.
So then this is a picture of Pearl Street. So see the water coming out of there? That's basically just water following the old sewer line. And that water was actually going in the sewer line. So once we sealed the new sewer line, put a new sewer line in, there was no place for it to go anymore because our old sewer line was acting as a groundwater drain. And it was just,
So where's it going now?
Can you
well,
explain? What do you-
we had to install, I'll show you, we had to install some check dams and different things to kind of pick that water up and tie it into the stormwater system.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, this is, we talk a little bit about sanitary sewer overflows. It's basically a condition where the sewage is released into the environment. It's caused by heavy rainfall, contaminates our receiving bodies of water, causes water quality problems. It can back up to people's homes, causing property damage and threaten public health and safety. So you can see this, when you see this
This
happening.
Bayview Street?
No, that's actually Mechanic Street.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And I will say, I can speak to that one a little bit because we get calls of that one a lot. And it's actually, there's so much vacuum, there's so much water moving so quickly underneath there. That's why you don't see water going everywhere. It's so much water passing through that it's just causing a vacuum and it's bubbling. It's air trying to move essentially, because we thought that too, and we popped it and there's nothing going on in there. We put the cover back on, and all of a sudden it started bubbling and boiling and everything, and we figured out that that's what it is in that particular case, not in the other ones. But
Oh my gosh, so there's like pooling water from the road or whatever, and then it's air that's coming out through the cracks
exactly.
and.
In that particular case, just I don't know what
Really? Oh.
maybe it's just sealed really well around the the outlet and inlet pipe. I don't know, but that's
I wouldn't have drank any of that water.
no.
Interesting.
Okay. So then we talk about inflow and infiltration. Now you have exfiltration, which is just the opposite. So we talk about, we don't want water getting into our system, or we don't want our sewage getting into the water, right? Out the environment. So this is like an example of a clay tile pipe. You got cracking, failing joints, corrosion, water. We basically, what I've been telling people is Free Street and Pearl Street was one giant leach field. because the water was just basically leaving the system when it was dry and it was filling up when it was wet. And I'll show you some interesting things that we found. So like this is an example of an Orangeburg lateral. It's just all crushed. It barely was connected to the main. You can see over here where there's just no quality control when it came to people connecting into the sewer main. They're just wrapping things with felt paper to patch things up and then tying it in. So water was getting in, sewage was getting out.
Right.
So, you know, inspection in this business, inspections are critical. You have to really have a firm grip on people connecting into your system, and you got to have inspections. There's requirements of what needed to be done. The town has a master drain layer certification program that makes a list of people who have gone through this course that the town provides. And once they're on the list, those are the only people that can install pipe in the town of Camden. We haven't been following that.
Oh, okay.
But we are rolling that out this winter, and we have a subcontractor doing the training. We're going to send out a mass blast to all the contractors. If you're not on this list, you can't put pipe in Camden. That would be just the way it is. And if they do, we're going to develop a form where they need to check off that they've had everything inspected. We need to look at it, you know, when they make the connection, we got to look at it when they bed the pipe, and then we have to look at it when it's getting ready to be buried. That's just something that has to be done.
So this is for laterals, Dave?
This is for lateral. We don't allow them to do mains,
Of course.
but this is for tying into a main.
Laying the lateral pipe and actually physically tying into the main as well.
Anything going from the house to the main.
And when they tie into the main, you're going to have a town inspector on site when they do as well?
Yes, when they do any type, and we have to do a permit adjustment, because right now it only costs $5 for this, which is pretty crazy. It should be like $250.
And that's
maybe
just for
more.
new connections.
That's for new connections, or even repairs, I think should fall in the same category, because you're really trying to pay for the inspection and for the documentation that this has been done correctly. And ideally, we would take a photo of it and we put it on GIS.
I mean, the ordinance now allows for the select board to set those permit fees every year. We just hasn't been appearing on that list that kind of triggers us to do it,
We're
I
gonna,
think, but
we're gonna find what the going rate is for this kind of thing, but it's really our time, and we shouldn't be losing money on this part of it. It really needs to cover our costs.
But we did, I mean, the ordinance is really strong. It was written in a really strong way. It was like, the select board has to be there watching when they connect it. You can see how whoever wrote this was paranoid in a good way, knowing the potential for problems with this. And
Well, that's
we
why.
used to approve
Yeah.
we used to do this,
Mhm.
the master drain layer permits. I remember we've had a few of it's been a long time, but
I talked with Sheldon, and we all both agree that it's the right thing to do, because
yeah.
when you start going and putting in $1.5 million into infrastructure, you just can't have anybody tying into this stuff. It's just too expensive of an item to be letting anybody play with. We need to make sure it's done properly.
right, they're supposed to be plumbers too. And
Right. They're going to have this course, and they're going to only the people on the list will be able to do the work. So this is an example of just a catch basin that was just randomly tied into the sewer system on Pearl Street underground. You wouldn't even have known it until we dug it up. So one of the things that, you know, the prior Wright Pierce, go ahead.
Yeah, a catch basin is just street water.
Street water, yeah. So Wright Pierce talked about some of the things that have been done in the past. So we did inspections, and we did smoke testing, and we did a lot of proactive things, and we did them on this road. But it just goes to show that you just don't know until you really start digging into this, and you find all kinds of other things.
That's the term.
well,
We want to monitor, we want to isolate, we want to identify these locations through flow meter testing and know that we have a problem in a location. But the reality is much of the inspections that you can do on the inside, you just don't always know where someone could have tied into something, you know,
But
past the house.
So
Or
can you tell by the flows where in town or
you
is the
can, and
biggest
that's what
eye
we're going to do.
problem?
We're part of our consent agreements requiring the town to put flow meters into to identify areas of high flow, so they compare it against, you know,
Regular,
rain
yeah.
events.
Yeah.
And then they'll see, oh, you got a spike in this location. All right, you need to further inspect that line of pipe. They'll camera it, or we'll smoke test and do those things. But there's no better way of really fixing the problem than to digging it up.
Right.
And that's what we found on Pearl Street.
Well, sure, when you dug it up, you found a bunch of problems, but it feels to me like for years, the town was intentionally not looking at certain things, and this isn't a criticism of anybody here, but we have said over and over again, oh, well, the laterals are, that's private property, that's been our mantra, like, private property, so, it's not our job to fix those things for people, and we're also not going to look to see if there are problems. And so when you take all of the laterals out of town and you say, to me, it feels like Pearl Street, the big difference there was that you guys decided to look at the laterals too. Whereas when my dad's street, when he lived on Spruce Street, there was a similar thing. The whole street was torn up. And I remember nothing about laterals. It was just, and I saw the clay ones. And so have we made like a decision as a town, or can we, that we are going to be looking at the laterals, or we're going to,
So I can answer that. So
Yeah.
the Pearl Street project, we knew when I talked with Audra about this, we knew immediately that, half of the line is lateral. So you get the main and you get the lateral. If you're only focusing on the main, you're never going to fix the problem, right? So why don't we just fix it right? So what we did is we built into the contract carrying a number so that the contractor could fix laterals on private property, and then we paid for it, and then we're billing them out for that work to be done. But we also cameraed every lateral. So if a lateral had a problem, we knew it, and we told them, all right, your lateral has a problem. We'll fix it for $100 a linear foot. And they were more than happy to do that. I think we had one person on the whole road that didn't want it done. And they're going to have it done but it's on their property. We had basically, we fixed 88 laterals. We replaced 88 laterals on Free and Pearl Street, which is a lot.
so how can we institutionalize that so that it becomes the practice that because we went around to we sent interns around for years to people's basements to see like, oh, is there a little bit coming, do you have something attached? Do you have a dehumidifier attached to the sewer system? But then we decided to not look at all at the lateral during that time. And it took me a really long time to figure out, like, I remember I was going around with the intern like, oh, we're going to track down the problem and all excited about it. And it never occurred to me as just a layperson, that pipe that's in the ground between my house and the street, how can we make it so that it's not just
It's just going to be part of the project when we do it. Like, so, I was going to kind of recap this at the end, but what our objective should be to do this correctly is you can't just hodgepodge and jump around and fix little pieces here and there. You got to say, all right, I'm going to fix this piece. I'm going to fix the main and all the laterals. Then we go out and we do some flow meter work, and then we do some further investigation. And we already kind of know where this is coming from, most of it, the big pieces. And then we say, all right, how much is it to do this section? And then we do the same thing we did on Pearl Street. We do the laterals, and we do the main, and we do all of it. So what we also found is that, it's not only just the lateral going from the house, but it's people's perimeter drains going around. A lot of their perimeter drains were tied in to the sewer line because they were deep. Roof gutters, sump pumps. And if you don't take care of that problem then and provide them an outlet, so part of this too is providing them stormwater outlets for this stormwater that they're generating, because they're going to want to put it back in the sewer. So you have to make them connect directly into the stormwater system for floor drains and roof leaders and any of these other stormwater contributors. Because if you don't take care of it then, they're just going to wait till you're gone, and they're going to hook the sump pump back up and put it back in the sewer, and then it's going back in the sewer again. And that's what you're trying to eliminate. So you got to provide them another place to put the stormwater. So when we do these things, we got to look at them holistically. You have to say, all right, we have to do stormwater, just like on Pearl Street. We have to do stormwater. we have to do the sewer line, we have to do the water line, and then we do the pavement and the surfacing on top. We do it holistically. And when we start doing this, we're going to do the flow meters, and we're going to have, a spreadsheet that's going to show condition of each one of those 4 infrastructure pieces: stormwater, sewer, road condition, and water. And when all those things have a high deficiency rate, they'll move higher up on the list. Those will become the first projects.
Do you have this partially done already?
Well, I've been doing this for 2 weeks, so, probably not
No.
at this point.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
just curious. I didn't
Yeah.
know.
But I mean, we
Other pieces of
we
it,
we
right?
have it kind of, Sheldon and I have it worked out already. We know kind of what direction we're going. We have Carrie that's been helping us too, from Wright Pierce.
But it really is just the two of you guys working on it?
No.
Well, we're bringing on more help to do this stuff, but yeah, pretty
Gary's
much.
been doing, seems like.
Carrie's been helping out a lot from
Mhm.
Wright Pierce. But this whole thing started
And
with
Ray
our-
Pierce is being paid to do this, right? I mean, it's not, the idea is we put a bunch of money in the budget so that it doesn't just have to be our employees that are doing it.
I think you're talking about something different. You're talking about the finding sources of I&I, and they're talking about like holistically planning our
Oh,
capital.
oh,
Like
okay.
the capital planning, we're looking at all of that.
Oh, right, just like you're the only one planning we could say it's just Audra planning the budget for the town or
I mean, what would happen is
overseeing it.
I'd make this list, this priority ranking list. I'd go over with the town manager. I'd say, look, this is what we're looking at for capital expenses. And she would build it into the budget, or we do a bond, or we do something like that. So that's what this is all about, is preparing you for the process to kind of go about fixing this.
Right, and I guess we're just trying to approach this differently than the way the towns approached it in the past. So in the past, it used to be, we would look at these things kind of separated and piecemealed and try to, okay, we'll patch a little bit over here because we know that's the big problem. And, this is the road that's really bad, and we'll pave this road. And it wouldn't necessarily, line up with what we had for sort of, sewer that really needed to be replaced, or stormwater that needed to be expanded or replaced. So we're just trying to take a different approach where we're looking at everything, like Dave said, holistically, and trying to come up with what our priorities are if you're looking at it as one.
So yeah, to your point, you've got the engineering group doing the pictures of the water, but it's going to take you guys to go ahead and assimilate the information to.
Mhm.
But we already kind of know, I mean, they made that list of these are the places that we know the flow was high and
Mhm.
some roads that are bad. And it's kind of, a lot of the time, you already know with the stormwater, kind of
Right.
these roads are really bad. And then you can see
And that's kind
pavement
of
obviously
the
already,
importance
like
of having one person kind of sitting over it all, is that you're able to take that look at everything together, and you're able to sort of consolidate all that information.
That's
And-
kind of what I'm going to be kind of putting together. I'm going to be taking all the bits and pieces and putting them together and ranking them based on their condition. And then just developing a long planning list of things that need to be done. And then you folks, I'll give you the information and you decide what you want to fix. If you don't want to fix it, that's fine. I move on to the other thing. That's,
So he's.
so we're not
drilling
digging up the
down to
roads a bunch of times, right?
Specifics for you.
That's
Right,
the
yeah,
ultimate
it's-
goal, is that we
right.
don't, like
Yeah.
Gould Street, for instance.
Right.
Like the water company dug that up a few years ago and people were really upset about it. It was really disruptive. And from what I understand, we have a bunch of stuff to fix on
storm.
Gould Street. It's not like we're going to have to dig that up again
Mm-hmm.
because nobody had the bandwidth at the time to say, oh, water company, okay, you want to do this? Now let's hustle and evaluate fully what the town needs to do and make sure we do it all together. Or was that a decision not to do that? I don't remember that being,
I wasn't here, so
I don't remember that coming to us and us being like, yeah, let's just leave it. That didn't
I
happen, right?
I don't think, the water company was prepared with their plans, and they had already gone forward on all that. And I just don't think we were ready, because we didn't,
Right.
we just didn't have people kind of doing it this way at the time.
I mean, the big thing is the DEP has a consent agreement, and there's with the town saying, you need to fix these things, okay? And the town doesn't want sewage leaking into the environment, and they don't want to be paying extra money for treating water that doesn't need to be treated.
Right.
That's pretty much what it boils down to. It's just those three simple things. So, so this is, oh, oh, you can't see the, okay, here we go. Oh, sorry. All right. So this right here is an example of the clay dam that we had to build. So that, can you see that pipe by his
Yeah.
knee? See how
Yep.
that, it's almost half full of water coming out of there? That's
Oh.
running all the time. That was going in the sewer line before. So we were basically treating that stormwater as sewage. So, that's one of the reasons why we increase our costs, chemical costs, energy costs, all your costs at the treatment plant go up when you have higher flows.
Right.
Jeez.
So that flows 24/7, but now it's going in the catch basin, not in the sewer, which could create other problems, but
I was gonna say, where is that catch basin?
that's
go?
going to end up in the river, but at least it's not going to the treatment plant.
Mm.
And it's clean water, it's groundwater.
Right.
So this is an interesting thing. So we put the binder coat down, and a segment of this old line was left in place, which it was capped, which is what it called for. But when JBI went in, the water company went to put the service lateral for the water line, they dinged the top of this old clay tile pipe, and this was collecting the groundwater, and it started forcing its way up and created a sinkhole because we had sediment that dropped down through the hole. We didn't know there was a hole. And then it created a sinkhole. We're like, what's going on? So we had to dig it up, and we found that they had digged the top of the clay tile pipe. But when they started looking in there, they found an eel.
But not that one.
This one right here.
No, but not that eel.
Not that eel. No,
Okay.
no. But
That's
this
of
one.
an adult large eel. Okay.
So this is on Oak Street, right there at the intersection of Oak Street. And we're thinking that we have a cross-country line that goes through the bog heading towards Elm Street. And we believe the water's chasing that line, getting to Oak Street. And then it was finding its way to the old sewer line. And because the old sewer line was so cracked and everything, you had these little rivulets flowing under the water. So an actual eel had the ability to make it to the old sewer line, which is crazy if you think about it. That just goes to show how bad our system was, that actually something could swim into the sewer line from that far away from the river.
Or it could have come up from, an eel that size would have been probably on its way up, but.
Sure.
Did
but-
anybody take pictures of the actual eel?
No. But it's a
Can you
fact.
instruct them that next time, should they find, or the fish that was in the Rawson Avenue?
Yeah, I wish we would have.
Those are,
The eel was dead, by the way, too. That was the other thing. So he got into the pipe, and I think he ran out of oxygen.
there shouldn't,
So every lateral and camera, every
what
lateral
was
was
that?
inspected.
What was that thing?
That was just so when we cambered every lateral, that was what they used.
Is that working now?
This was the contractor that did this. That was part of their contract to check
To the
every.
town's camera system still not.
We could have done it, but we
Oh.
just wouldn't have had time to do
Matter
it.
of fact, I think that unless they have the exact same one, I think that is
May have been
ours.
yours,
I think
yeah.
that one's
Can
ours.
ours record now?
Yes. Yeah. It was down for a while, but yes, it can record now. And that one's just the portable. That one cannot record. That one's just the little portable unit. But
So, okay, so, like I said, every lateral was video cameraed, inspected. Pearl Street overview. We found 3 old catch basins that were tied into the old sewer line. So this is water draining off the road, going into a catch basin, going into the sewer line. 12 homes were actively tied into the sewer with foundation drains. Huge amount of groundwater. Just imagine that crumpled pipe laying below the water table, just filling with water. We eliminated old discontinued service lines that were allowing groundwater to enter in. And then we replaced over 85 new sewer services. And we actually upgraded with a few extra lines for potential build out. And all 85 of those, if we replaced them, probably were bad. So it just goes to show the magnitude of how bad Pearl Street was. So I ran these numbers now. Would I say this is the exact number? Probably not, but this is just kind of give you a feel for what kind of fixing So I remember the slide I showed you that showed the age of the pipe and where we
Right.
are.
Yep, yep.
So this Pearl Street project is basically cost us about $1.5 million for sewer.
Mhm.
And the road work for 4,000 feet of road, because we didn't do all of Free Street. This was all for Pearl and for free, by the way, not just Pearl. We did 7,920 linear feet, including laterals. Comes up to about $227 a linear foot, and about $128, $129 a linear foot for the road work. I just ran a straight calculation all the way across.
Okay, yep.
You can see where I get to the end, about $20 million to fix the old stuff.
That's 26, all the 26-year-old and older.
Yeah, 26 to 75.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I
just to
get
give
it.
you a kind of a handle on what it would cost to do all this. And I'm leaving out our time is not factored into this.
I guess laterals don't count because ultimately they get paid
Yeah,
somewhat by.
well, on this number right here,
Good
I
point.
think
Is it 7,900 include laterals?
$50,000 of this was
Oh.
actual sewer laterals
Yeah.
paid for by the
Not
homeowner.
much. Not much.
But we have to carry the lateral to the home, to the
Yeah.
property line, and then they have to pay from the property line to the house. That was about $50,000 worth of costs.
Yeah.
Which we're recovering from the homeowner, which will come off that 1.5.
Basically, with the current prices, $20 million to fix the rest of the stuff.
Fix the rest of the stuff, and by the time we get to that stuff, I'm gonna guess that the other stuff will probably start needing to be replaced
That's
too.
only that's only the piping.
That's my question, Dave. Do we have areas that are mixed where we have pipe that's beyond its lifespan mixed with pipe that still falls into the lifespan, and therefore, when we dig it up, we're gonna replace all of it because we're not gonna leave
Probably.
stuff that's less than 50 years old, so.
I mean, why would you want to
No,
do that?
absolutely not.
Yeah,
So-
that's a waste of time, I
Yeah.
think. You're there, you're digging it, you fix it, it's just the way to do it.
But the HDP will last longer than 50 years, right?
Yeah, a couple decades, but
Or maybe longer, right?
I mean, it all depends on the condition and everything, but I think I read a couple decades, yeah.
A couple decades more or a couple decades total?
New
It's-
pipe. Yeah, it's not
That's
gonna,
less than 50 years.
huh?
Am I,
Did I say?
Yes, 20
To
is less than 50.
decades.
right,
But-
am I?
Centuries, do you mean?
Probably about 100 to 150 years, I would say.
Oh, okay, Right.
I would
You
think
caught
so,
me off
yeah.
guard there. Yeah, it's not 20 years. There's a
Yeah.
decade's 20 years, right? 2
We
decades.
don't know, I guess we don't. know.
No, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking probably 100 years on a PVC pipe.
And it took basically the Pearl Street project from its idea to being done. I mean, we'll consider it done, even though I know it's a second layer of tar that needs to go on it on streets and whatnot. How long did that take?
Pearl Street?
Yeah.
It took
From
us from April until now.
No, from the idea that we need to do it.
Oh, 45 years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that was
I don't
because
know
you
if
talked about it a lot and nobody was willing to want to do it. I mean, can you see why no one wanted to do it?
This is the first
Right.
big project like this the town has done, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen anything that any of my predecessors have done.
But it seems like there needs to be, that's why you're working on it, the next one. I mean, this is
Right.
darn close to done, minus the top coat and some sidewalks,
Mm-hmm.
but
And I guess like we brought you on this journey to to kind of explain the reality of
Mhm.
what we're probably going to have to do next, which is a really large bond.
mm,
Are you gonna try and tackle it one street at a time? Or are you proposing that we?
probably an area at a time.
Well, I think that, Dave and Sheldon, they still have to do all that planning that we're talking about. But I think that when it comes to how we, finance and fund this, the town is just going to have to take out a very large bond and work off that for years.
Okay, so one bond for a significant project that includes many streets and neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So how you'd like to approach it?
Yes.
Okay.
Like
And
what
that-
Rockland just did, kind of.
Yeah,
There's
kind of
their-
like what Rockland just did is a good way of thinking about it.
What did they just do?
Their $20 million stormwater bond.
Yeah, theirs is, I mean, their system is different and more complicated than ours in so many different ways. you know, they're gonna, like, to make the sort of dent that we can in our I&I problem, they'd have to spend way more than $20 million. But I think that, like, you know, we can also use that money to leverage grants to help out with this kind of thing. Like, you know, the MDOT projects that we've talked about, you know, we'll be able to do some of those at the same time. So it's, you know, like Dave said, these things take a long time to plan. It's really just having the resources available to be able to make this level of, you know, capital investment in our system.
I don't want to tackle another project this large in 1 year. I think we got to scale it down to maybe just like a Pearl Streets, not like Pearl and Free. That was too much.
Really?
Yeah, it was, you know, there was a lot of work. It was, you know, it's just, we did a lot of this internally. We general contracted all of this. We didn't have a consulting firm do all this
Oh,
for
I see.
us.
Oh, you were your
We
own
did all of
GC.
this.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a lot of work. And
Yeah, and I get that's an important point too. So, you know, one of the things that Dave and I have been working towards on the public works side of things is really building the capacity of our crew to be able to do big projects. So it's getting people who have experience, like we have a pipe laying foreman who has experience in, you know, building stormwater systems. And, you know, so Public Works were the ones who laid the stormwater line. That wasn't a contractor that came in and did that.
Does that save the town significantly to do
Oh,
that? It seems like it would.
it's
but-
huge. Yeah.
Huge. So, and then we have we have other people who are very skilled at, you know, building sidewalks and doing the road work side of things. So, you know, building the capacity of our staff to do that work has saved us a lot of money on the road work side of it.
So we haven't had a consulting firm in the past 3 years do any sidewalks. We've internally built all our sidewalks within Public Works.
Except for the MDOT stuff.
The MDOT stuff had already started and that had already been done, but you're right. Yeah, the MDOT stuff was done by MDOT and engineered by them. But we've done a huge amount of sidewalks.
Did you guys do the Washington Street one?
Yeah.
Is that you?
We did the Washington Street one. We did one on Knowlton Street.
Yep.
And then we
Park
granite
Street a couple
curb.
years ago.
Yeah, we did Park Street.
Mm.
So we general contracted this whole project. So we're the ones that lined up all of the subcontractors. We're the ones that we did all of the stormwater system. We rebuilt the whole sidewalk ourselves on Pearl Street. And this is a lot of work for a crew, you know, with 9 people.
Yeah.
And we have to do trash and, you know, pick up dead animals and fix signs and answer complaints,
Sure.
deal with stormwater side erosion on roads, you know, deal with the dams. It's just all this stuff that we're doing. And we have like 2 crews, like a maintenance crew, and we have like a building crew or a construction crew, and we broke it into 2, and that's how we did it.
Dave, question on that. Would it be wise to include GC costs in this, just so that?
Yeah, so like Carrie was a big help. Like he actually helped out with the sewer piece of this. And if he wouldn't have been there, it would have been like a really difficult. I mean, Dave would have had to pick up the slack, but Carrie was here and he was instrumental in making all this happen. But we would want something like that or something internal, somebody internal to be able to do that kind of thing.
Can you explain a little bit the like who's doing what and like Kendall is he like does
So-
everybody else know like who's doing that like everything
Like the organizational
yeah.
structure. Yeah, I have a chart for that. We didn't do that
Like it-
tonight because we thought it would take
Yeah.
so long to get through this,
Okay.
but yeah.
like
can
it's
we-
kind of sounding like we're asking Dave to do everything. Like, but is there some other plan or?
There, I mean,
Okay.
there's other resources that he has to make this work. Kendall being a really important one of them, and then Sheldon, like hugely important.
Oh
in
yeah,
the
obviously.
Additional
But
responsibilities.
Kendall's moving to a new,
She's technically already in that as of this week. She's the administrative coordinator for wastewater and public works department.
okay.
What was
Did
the
that already
original-
get announced?
I mean, yeah, for
Oh,
the most part, yeah.
Everybody else already knows that, like through osmosis or,
I mean, the staff know it.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That'll be really helpful, right? To have somebody else be able to answer emails and,
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
if you
And-
think about it, we have the largest department in the whole town and we had no administrative help. So I was doing all the administrative work as well as all of the planning, as well as all of the oversight of the, the workforce. I had Rick helping, but it's still a lot for one person to theoretically do. I do time cards, I do all the invoicing, I do all those things. Kendall's going to be taking a lot of that part off my plate, which will allow me to do this planning.
Mhm.
So that's the idea. And then
did that get talked about at one of the meetings that I missed?
Sheldon will be doing.
Haven't gone into this.
Okay.
with it.
Sheldon will be doing the treatment plant operations. Yeah.
What did I've never met Sheldon before, but what did you do? I mean, how long have you been doing the wastewater thing?
Yeah, so I've been with the wastewater department just over 15 years. So when Dave Ballstridge was still here, I was the assistant superintendent. And
Okay.
so obviously he has since retired and moved on. So I've sort of slid into that supervisory role, working with
So it's
Dave
you
now.
and 4 others? Or-
Yes.
yeah.
And the other part of this is having a engineer on staff to also assist with all of this planning is going to be really important for making this work.
And who's that?
We are currently looking for one.
So is that a full-time position?
Yes,
But I thought we hired one already.
we did, and it didn't work out. Yes.
And in some ways, maybe it could save, it, like, a lot of the time when we're trying to discuss everything separately, it's like, the wastewater department is going to report to you, and then the public works department reports to you, and they're in totally different budgets, but they're under the same roads. I mean, isn't there some potential?
I mean, especially now that, the
Sometimes you need one
focus-
person making the decision about when the road gets dug up, right? Or,
Right, yeah, I guess like the focus is going to be, on the collection system especially. It's going to be really, really important to have, one person who understands what's going on in terms of both infrastructure, both our stormwater and wastewater and the condition of the road. And it's just very fragmented when you have multiple departments with different responsibilities, and everybody, I mean, it's understandable. Everybody optimizes for their particular position and their particular responsibility. So, it can be difficult when you have 2 different departments advocating for 2 different needs to kind of come together and figure out what the priority is.
right, like it always felt a little bit like Dave Bolstrich had been told before, there was a real directive to keep rates super low, maybe. And then, so maybe we weren't doing things or.
Well, and also like, the treatment, to me, it was mind blowing when I first got here and saw that we had a treatment plant with no SCADA system. Like that's an unbelievable, like to be 2016, like when did
Yeah.
the upgrade start, and have a plant that's so manually operated?
Mhm.
That takes a tremendous amount of like manpower and energy. So every single
Mhm.
person who was at the treatment plant was focused mostly on the treatment plant. They only had time for like big issues when it came to the collection system. They just weren't available to do the amount of, like maintenance and planning and upkeep that it really needed, given how old the plant was.
Most places, the Public Works Department takes care of the collection system because it falls under the road. Public Works should be taking care of everything under the road because of the reason Audra's saying, because you can look at everything together and you can plan it all together. And I mean, we're not really looking at any net gain here in people either. It's more of just moving people around. That's the other piece of
That
it.
makes sense.
But the things that we'll end up seeing in this year's budget cycle then be like, I imagine, nice introduction for the generator for the, whatever it was, Mount Batty Street probably, or those things, or are you just collecting ideas right now? Is your
So,
formulating
yeah,
your-
I mean, it's probably gonna really,
So we're we still have some money that's unspent from the grant portion of our USDA RD funding for the treatment plant upgrade.
Oh, okay.
So there's going to be some pieces of this that, we'll be able to use that grant
How
money
much,
to
basically, how much money are we talking about?
Like 1.2 million,
What?
I think.
Left over?
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's very specific what we can use it for.
right.
Like
Like what
taking down
sort
the
of things
fence?
can
It
you
has
use
to be
for?
directly attributed to the treatment plant or the
They're gonna
treat-
say they ran out of money
So
for
could a
that. I know they
generator
will.
be considered, is that direct enough? Yeah.
Sorry.
So it has to be directly tied to the treatment plant or the 2 pump stations that were
Mhm.
identified in the grant. So,
Or the force main.
or the force main.
So does a generator fit in that?
We were told at the last meeting it didn't. But I think we need to take another crack at that and ask that question, because that would be
We
helpful.
just need to ask that question differently.
We do,
Like another backup generator for the plant.
right, because it's the plant.
Yeah.
Right, and like
Oh.
some of the things that we're gonna need are, like we could use a vac truck, and we could use, we're gonna have to do the fencing over at the walkway.
What about the end of the pipe that's getting water from the river to add in, whatever that one was called?
The what,
Was that Rawson Street,
Yeah,
the one with the weir and the pipe?
Ross and
The overflow pipe.
Overflow
right,
pipe.
but
That's
become
was
the
Ross and
inflow
Ave
pipe.
one of the ones that,
That wasn't part of
No.
the.
No, I mean, it's not.
no, that was
part of-
Washington Street. Yeah, because no, if it was Washington Street, we could have done it, and C Street,
Cove Road. and
Cove
C
Road,
Street.
C Street. Those are the 2 that we can spend the money on,
Oh, okay,
and the treatment plant.
okay.
So, anything associated with anything to do with those 2 pump stations and the treatment plant, that money can be spent on.
But not the other ones.
No. And it's
Well, what
really, you got to pose the question to was it Rural Water?
Hmm.
I mean, we can't, it's because we were the ones that said what we wanted to do. Back when this was all approved by
Oh.
voters, we were like, this is what we're gonna do, and this is, it's gonna be these things, and so they're gonna want it to connect to those
Right.
things. It has to be reasonably part of the project that was proposed.
It's just
But
like
maybe
when
the
you-
Mount Batty Street generator could be just complementary to the Washington Street generator because of the fact that,
It could be just a backup generator to the treatment plant. That would be one way of saying it, and then maybe we could, but we need to ask the question ourselves, I
Yeah,
think.
so there's a few things that we talked about that we will be able to use that money for.
I think this next year is going to be more of a fixing these immediate problems that like the weir and the easy stuff. Planning maybe a small project for next year, because we'll still be on the heels of fixing Pearl Street up. Maybe planning a small project that may not be incorporated into this bond. And then a lot of it is contingent on what you folks decide to do with the bonding and whether or not we're going to take on more of these bigger projects, because they're going to cost money and we need to have funding to do it. So that's more something, the decision you have to make. And if you decide to do it and we put it out to voters and they vote for it, we will do it. But, I have never seen a wastewater bond like this not pass. Generally, they always pass because people don't want pollution in the ground and they don't want to be paying for treating water that doesn't need to be treated.
But you're right, there is an element to,
Yeah.
It's the reason why when I did the septic out front of my house, the same season I didn't put a garage in the back and have everything tore up. That there's only so much capacity that people in the town can withstand of stuff being tore up. So you're right about before tearing up another one,
Finishing
getting
on.
finish
Yeah.
Pearl and Freeze, so that's solidified.
Yeah.
And there's enough stuff that's getting tore up here soon
Mhm.
on Route 1. That's going to be an inconvenience too for a long-term piece.
Yeah. I mean, we want to, like you said, you want to take chunks of
Yeah.
this at a time. You don't want to be having 5 of these go on in town.
No, you don't have the capacity to manage that.
No.
even just all the phone calls associated with people.
Right.
What about the financing of it in terms of the sewer and the stormwater? And we're still planning on charging a portion of these projects to wastewater
That's a decision for all
because
of
we
you.
made that whole thing about the,
You have the option of doing either.
If we take it out of the general fund, there's some benefits to do it that way as well.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's,
Well, that's the way historically we always have done it. That's what the charter used to say, that we would, that all capital improvements were funded by taxpayers and operation and maintenance were the ratepayers. Then in order to get this rural water stuff, we changed it. I mean, there's still, we should just talk about it in terms of not charging anything to the ratepayers. One of the things that they told me at DEP one time is that we don't qualify for a lot of funding to help us with our collection system because we haven't demonstrated that we spend enough money. Our rates were so low that we weren't like eligible for funding from DEP because we weren't investing enough ourselves.
so you're saying that came out of, that's the debt, one of the downsides to doing this out of general fund,
Yeah, that we have to,
because our rates are artificially low because we use general.
yeah, we don't
fund.
need to keep our rates
Probably not anymore.
crazy low, right? We're probably more,
Pretty average now.
yeah,
I mean, this is a separate discussion. We're
Yeah.
at 7:15. I don't,
definitely.
that's something we should definitely talk about, but it's a whole nother.
Oh, yeah,
can of
no,
worms,
I guess
think.
this is just really because,
Yeah.
you know, this year we're talking about, this is a year where unfortunately some really hard decisions need to be made about funding and priorities. And, you know, you're going to get a lot of things thrown at you during the budget season of stuff that needs to happen. And I just don't want anyone to lose sight of this because this is really expensive. It's a really big problem and it's not going away unless we really commit to doing something about it. And doing something about it is very expensive. So I just think it's really important to make sure that everyone's aware of this going into this year's budget season and moving forward.
Can you summarize briefly why you feel it's better to go for a $20 million bond for a comprehensive solution versus, a $2 million bond for Union Street or whatever, and do it one street?
So I'd say, we're going to be picking away and racking up our debt service little by little over the years. And it's going to make it, really difficult to sort of plan this more holistically if we're kind of like just trying to pick off little projects, every year. And it's really it's really hard to sort of like commit to this as sort of like the long-term program and vision if we're doing it on like a street by street basis year after year.
When do you start paying interest on a bond? Is it when
About
you
2
receive the bond
years.
or is it when you actually draw the money?
Like if we're going to go through the bond bank, for example, it's typically about like 18 months.
But what I mean is
Right.
do you start paying debt service on 20 million immediately or only when you start drawing on the 20 million? So
Like only the amount that you've drawn down.
Well, yeah, it'll be about like 18 months after we'll pay the debt service.
So you take all 20 million
That's what I'm
like right
saying.
away
The 20
and then,
million.
then start paying interest on $20 million right away?
Not necessarily. So what we would be doing is like authorization to borrow up to.
Is this a
20
mortgage or a HELOC?
It's like a HELOC.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that word.
Yeah.
Home equity line of credit would be something where you only
Yeah,
take
okay,
money,
okay.
you only pay money on the money you've taken on your.
Right. So
Yeah,
what,
okay.
what,
Is it
okay,
a big,
just to
is it
clarify,
a big
I
credit
guess.
card or a car loan?
Sorry.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's only on what we've taken out. It was
Yes,
the
yeah,
other
okay.
thing.
And so to clarify, we'd just be asking for authorization to borrow up to
Okay.
20 million, and then we would draw down from it as we did projects, and then pay the debt service on what we've drawn down from.
And are you confident that 20 million is enough to cover your general contracting costs and, all the,
I mean, I showed you my calculation.
Yeah, it's
That was just to
rough.
give you, it's a rough
Yeah.
calculation.
so how would we come up with the number in the end? Or is that a consultant?
This is
I
a much
mean-
bigger conversation, right? I mean, are we
I'm
gonna
sorry,
schedule any
yeah.
of this? I don't
Yeah,
know, like,
we're just beginning to get this out there.
we're not making any decisions. Or
No.
I don't know if my
Give you
mind
that
can.
number, what we would have to do is we would have to have all of the flow meter information done. We would then like isolate the location. We'd say, okay, what needs to be done here? And we'd say, okay, let's do an RFP on the work that needs to be done. Then we'd get the real true costs. And we would do that a chunk at a time. you'll never know what the full cost of doing all of that pipe is going to be until it's done. That's the reality. But we can give it a good estimate and know ballpark of what it's going to cost. And we might not be able to get every bit of it done, maybe we'll get more of it done. You just don't know. I mean, I think it's more of a commitment to saying, all right, I'm fixing this. And it sets the wheels in motion to continually improve the system because you've reserved the debt service capacity of the town to do that work. So other things will have to take a back seat potentially down the road. That's the reality of the whole thing.
Every time we've had a select board priorities, including in the Opera House a couple months ago, I was high on our list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the DP, when I talked to somebody from there one time, they said that per capita, Camden is releasing more gallons of untreated sewage than probably any other area in Maine. And, they kind of, few of them privately laugh about that a little bit as something kind of inconsistent with Camden's perception of itself.
We don't have to do anything.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's your choice. You can do what you want. We can give you the information and tell you what we think is the right thing to do. And the regulators are going to tell us what they think they want us to do. But in the end, it's the people's decision to spend the money and fix the problem.
Yeah, we're just trying to.
Yeah, and then
It's a pathway.
the trailer park issue is separate because maybe that might be funded, right?
And it's an extension, so that's a little bit different than fixing what.
No, this is just fixing what we have over here.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the trailer park addition, but that goes to the place without a generator. Well, yeah, so I don't know. But I think the
And then
generator
to
is
the
really
place where the
important.
river.
A lot of
That in the I&I.
a lot of things that have to be kind of squared away.
Yep.
I mean, but we know that what we were doing before wasn't really working. We were doing all these things, but there was no measurable, felt like there was all this stuff like, oh, we did this and we did this.
Oh,
But when you look at total gallons, there was nothing to point to that the town has reduced its total gallons of discharge.
we did notice, we did
I was
mention
going to
that,
ask
yeah.
Sheldon that last storm
Right.
where we got a bunch of rain, I drove around a little bit and I saw that the yacht club manhole was overflowing like it always does. But did you say, I didn't see anything by the fire station. That one oftentimes will overflow.
Right, and
And by Bayview Street, did we have any overflows?
nope, not at Bayview. It handled it pretty well. Obviously, it handled it really well in the sense that there wasn't an overflow. C Street did well.
There normally probably would have been. I mean,
And
I
they
know we
nor-
can't say
that was
conclusively, but
my thought. In that amount of rain, we would have seen one before.
I
So
really,
what are you trying to say, that the Pearl Street
That's
project?
exactly what I'm saying.
Okay,
Yeah,
so the
that's
Pearl
awesome.
Street project made a big
Making a
impact.
difference.
It made a difference because there was so much. I couldn't believe the amount of water going in.
Huh.
It was
I have
just-
so many videos of that manhole by the fire station overflowing and the one by Bayview Street.
In your head, what do you think is going to be next, or where do you think will be next after that?
You
hate to say it, but the bang for our buck.
There's two places. Well, there's actually three places.
Yeah, the
There's
one you're gonna get so
Mechanic,
upset with us.
Oh,
Mechanic, Bayview, and Lime Rock Street are the ones that
Really, you think that those are the ones?
Those are the ones that are on the Bayview one is probably the worst because it's influenced tidally.
Yeah, Bayview Street. We probably need
It's
to abandon
underwater.
Bayview Street.
So it's probably all old and all deteriorited.
Bayview Street is like
And
such a mess
listen,
with
I
those
don't-
condos. We don't want to
I don't
put
want
any
to
town
pick
money into
Bayview
that.
Street. That's that would be my least favorite one to go after. But
Gonna
that's
be
probably the one with
under-
the biggest bang for your
Really?
buck.
Under the
Just
ocean.
guessing. And then Lime Rock Street is right up there too. I think that might
Oh,
be
yeah.
another one. And then I'm thinking Mechanic Street.
And Lime Rock isn't as densely populated.
No, but it's a wet area and we got a water problem over there. And yeah,
A lot of
There's a
buried
lot
streams.
more, at least with Lime Rock Street, there are other streets that go into it. If you don't have Lime Rock Street, there's still other ways to get around, which is nice.
Yeah,
sure.
there's a lot of other
Yeah.
benefits in doing Lime Rock.
Yeah, Lime Rock would be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a stream there that could be daylighted and
There needs to be sidewalk there.
And
There's-
right,
there's
traffic
stuff both
calming.
below and above the ground.
But Bayview Street's the one that that's really
And
bad.
That's really,
It's
that's,
really bad.
yeah.
We have a pretty good idea, and the road's falling apart.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of good stormwater over there.
Is that why there's like the
It's
big
very,
hump?
very
by-
deep.
It's very deep, yeah, it's very deep.
But the water from the ocean is, if you just look in the catch basins, is like right under, when you have really high tide, you can look in the catch basin, it's like right up to there. And all the sea level rise projections show
Hmm.
we should be really careful about investing a bunch of money in Bayview Street without a major planning. All of the drainage from that stream goes underneath those condos.
Yeah, there's
Just-
a bigger conversation about Bayview Street in
Mm.
terms of
I hope so.
private property owners and sea level rise and.
Sounds like a big
But
mouse.
for a small project, I would like to do Park Street.
Oh, that sounds more.
Park Street from
Which side of Route 1?
the other side.
East side?
Yeah, east
Go
side.
Lime Rock Street.
Yeah.
Huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
That one's in rough shape. Stormwater's completely falling apart. Road's in rough shape. Water lines in rough
Would you be
shape.
willing to take that on in 2024 as a small project? or is
That was my idea of my
Okay.
small project. That a Gould.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
those people are not going to be happy after.
But that's my small project, and that would give us the time to plan for the big one the next
Okay.
time around.
Sure.
Interesting.
That was kind of what I was thinking.
We're at 7:30. Is there anything else major? Slideshow's done, which was great and very
I
informative.
just want to thank the people on Pearl Street because they were extremely patient, tolerant, and very nice. And that was a long summer for them.
Yeah.
And, we're not quite done yet, but we're very close to it. And we had maybe 2 or 3 people that were a little bit upset. Other than that, everybody was wonderful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your credit to
Yeah.
the citizens and to your crew, Dave,
Yeah.
for making it that
The
way.
crew they're still working right now.
Yeah.
They've been working right at it the whole time.
Also, and Carrie's an excellent resident inspector.
Carrie did a
Very
phenomenal
nice.
job.
Yeah.
He carries the
So
same person
interesting.
doing the evaluations too.
Yeah, right? Or the training for
The training, yeah.
I-
we figured
I'd love
having
to
a-
have him in
Another
sometime.
contractor, like a subcontractor, do that kind of training.
Mhm.
So it's not us, because we should be in the training also, to be honest with you.
Yep.
So we hear the same message. But he's just great. He's really been a huge help.
We should have him come sometime, and he's taken thousands of drone photos over the past however many years. He's really interesting to,
Doesn't like the thought of publicly speaking.
if we could make it somehow. Every time I see him on the street or something and he starts talking about how things are going, I always learn so much. But
He's the most
And
dedicated
he has all these
contractor I've
pictures.
ever seen
Yeah.
for the town of Camden.
Yeah,
There's no question in my
absolutely.
mind. The guy's really pulling for us.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This was great. Really appreciated all of you.
yeah, this was really interesting.
Hopefully it was helpful and
That was.
to understand some things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that was,
We got the full scope. Thank you.
thank you for not like